Today's been a bad day. It's cold, wet.
Our lives are in imminent danger at this point, and I am in fear for my children, and that is, as a mom.
The minus 28 degrees Celsius threshold. Minus 28 degrees Celsius, minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. A temperature low enough to freeze tissue and fingertips within minutes and render most conventional heating systems ineffective. While much of the city retreats behind sealed doors and central heating, a silent and brutal struggle for survival unfolds on sidewalks beneath thin layers of nylon. Winter relief reports often raise the same question. Why, at the height of a blizzard, do many people refuse shelters and remain outside? Field investigations suggest the answer does not stem from stubbornness, but from a different lens of lived experience. Crowded spaces, the risk of losing the few possessions accumulated over a lifetime, altercations, or strict curfews push some to choose a more autonomous option. Erecting their own tents, establishing their own watch systems, and negotiating directly with nature. But surviving outdoors through 3 consecutive days of blizzard conditions requires more than instinct. This report from the Homeless Fact examines the harsh principles of survival, where the laws of heat transfer, moisture, and human endurance are applied with ruthless precision by those fighting to stay alive through each sleepless night. The paradox of movement and the discipline of no sweat. From a medical standpoint, in blizzard conditions, temperature alone is not the fastest killer. The true threat is moisture. Water conducts heat away from the body many times faster than air. A base layer soaked with sweat instantly becomes a heat-dissipating mesh, draining core body temperature. Field observations reveal a stark contrast between those newly homeless and those who have endured multiple winters. When the wind begins to howl, newcomers often react with urgency, running, securing tarps, digging snow at high intensity. The immediate sensation of warmth deceives them. Minutes after stopping, sweat-soaked clothing begins to freeze. By contrast, seasoned survivors follow an uncompromising rule: the discipline of not sweating. They move slowly, regulate their breathing, conserve energy, and prevent their heart rate from spiking. Every drop of moisture is treated as a liability. Toast does not come only from snow. It also comes from breath. A single night of breathing inside an enclosed space can generate the equivalent of a cup of water, freezing onto sleeping bags and face coverings. Rotating scarves, tucking damp fabric inside clothing layers to dry gradually using body heat. These become technical survival maneuvers rather than casual adjustments. In this environment, survival is no longer about strength. It is about precision. The ground is a massive heat sink. One of the most fatal mistakes in sleeping outdoors is focusing only on protection above, while ignoring the largest contact surface, the ground. Concrete and frozen soil operate through direct heat conduction, continuously drawing warmth from the body without pause. Rather than searching for thick blankets, the primary survival strategy is to create a thermal break between the body and the ground. The most common and often life-saving material is cardboard. Its corrugated structure forms countless pockets of still air, one of nature's most effective insulating layers. A multi-layer isolation system is typically constructed. Plastic sheeting at the base to block moisture from seeping upward, several layers of cardboard stacked above, followed by an old yoga mat or waterproof foam pad, and only then the sleeping bag. A properly insulated base can determine whether someone is physically able to stand up the next morning. The cocoon structure and the technique of sealing dead space. In blizzard conditions, no single piece of equipment can be allowed to become a weak link. The commercial label -20 degrees Celsius sleeping bag becomes meaningless without a proper layering strategy. A common technique involves placing a thinner sleeping bag inside a thicker one. The trapped, motionless air between the two layers becomes the true thermal barrier, preventing heat loss. Heat loss often begins in small physical details. Snow boots left outside can freeze solid overnight. Wrapping boots in plastic and placing them inside the sleeping bag becomes mandatory to preserve flexibility. Metal zippers, excellent conductors of heat, must be turned inward to avoid contact with the freezing tent wall. As for the tent itself, thousands of microscopic needle holes along seams allow cold air infiltration. Experienced individuals seal these gaps with tape or candle wax. They create a double wall structure by hanging an additional tarp slightly away from the tent wall, then packing snow around the base to block wind drafts. However, the more sealed the system becomes, the higher the risk of CO2 buildup. A ventilation gap at the top of the tent must always remain open. A few degrees of warmth are sacrificed in exchange for oxygen and survival. Heat control and the temptation of alcohol. Maintaining an open flame inside a thin nylon tent is a high-risk gamble. Fire hazards and carbon monoxide poisoning in enclosed spaces make flame-based heat sources a last resort. Instead, controlled static heat sources are prioritized. Chemical heat packs or hot water bottles wrapped in cloth are not placed randomly. They are positioned against major arterial areas, such as the inner thighs or underarms. Blood circulating through these points functions like a central heating system, distributing warmth throughout the body. One particularly strict piece of street medical wisdom is repeatedly emphasized: absolute avoidance of hard alcohol. Alcohol creates an immediate illusion of warmth due to peripheral vasodilation, as blood moves from the body's core to the skin surface. In freezing environments, this superficial warmth is rapidly stripped away by the cold, accelerating core temperature drop. The result is a profound drowsiness that can become permanent. In extreme cold, survival depends not only on what is added, but on what is deliberately refused. Micromanagement. Water, energy, and the physiology of waste. Blizzard conditions distort the human sense of thirst, while cold, dry air continuously extracts moisture through respiration. Dehydration thickens the blood, weakens circulation, and impairs cognition. Preserving liquid water becomes a physical challenge. If a water bottle is left upright, ice forms first at the top of the section most exposed to cold air. The practical solution is to store the bottle upside down and keep it close to the body. Ice will form at what is now the bottom, preserving liquid water near the opening for survival. From an energy standpoint, survival does not favor heavy meals that burden digestion. Instead, it requires continuous intake of small portions of high-fat foods, such as peanut butter or cheese. A steadily working stomach functions like a slow-burning thermal reactor, producing consistent internal heat. Even bodily functions must be strategically managed. Containers are prepared inside the tent to eliminate the need to unzip the entrance at night. Each opening would release precious accumulated static warmth. In these conditions, even waste management becomes a thermal calculation. The sociology of a blizzard and the invisible watch system. When a blizzard blocks all routes, sidewalk social structures automatically shift into collective defense mode. Tents are arranged in circles or aligned in rows, using aerodynamic principles so that one tent shields another from wind. The greatest danger during a blizzard is not the sound of wind, it is the silence from the neighboring tent. Silence may signal exhaustion, deep hypothermia, or unconsciousness. Rotating watch shifts are established. Activities that appear trivial, such as playing solitaire, listening to the radio, function as neurological anchors, forcing the brain to remain active against lethal drowsiness. Periodic check-ins, tapping tent walls, assessing signs of life in others, slurred speech, staggering, loss of shivering reflex, become the only safety net available. An inexpensive mobile phone becomes a life and death communication hub, tracking snowplow routes and emergency warming centers as they open. The map of collapse. Hyperthermia doesn't kill suddenly, it powers down. At -28 degrees Celsius, death rarely arrives as a dramatic collapse. It comes like a system gradually shutting down. In many field reports, the most frightening moment isn't the shivering, it's when the shivering stops. Shivering is a rescue mechanism. Muscles contract to generate heat. When the body no longer has enough energy to shiver, the risk escalates sharply. The brain begins prioritizing shutdown, disabling non-essential functions to preserve the core. Those who have survived multiple winters don't talk about warm or cold. They talk about alert or fading. Because in a blizzard, hypothermia isn't just about temperature. It's about cognitive decline. Sentences become shorter, vocabulary shrinks, irritability spikes, then turns into abnormal apathy. Movements grow clumsy, dropping a lighter even while wearing gloves, fumbling endlessly with a zipper. And most dangerous of all, a form of faulty logic that sounds reasonable, deciding to remove layers because I'm too hot, or stepping outside just for a moment, then drifting away from safety. Street groups, therefore, develop what medicine would call a minimal neurological assessment. No equipment required. Does the person answer their name correctly? Do they recognize where they are? Do they understand the question just asked? 3 questions, but effectively a brain monitor. When answers slip from reality, the blizzard becomes an emergency room without a roof. Another nearly invisible threat, afterdrop, the continued fall of core temperature even after reaching warmth. The reason lies in circulation. Rapid warming of extremities can send cold blood from arms and legs back toward the center, lowering core temperature further. Those with long experience outdoors don't believe in miracles. They know that getting someone into warmth isn't enough. You must monitor alertness, speech rhythm, and motor coordination in the minutes that follow. In extreme conditions, rescue sometimes isn't pulling someone to their feet. It's keeping them awake when sleep begins to smell like unconsciousness. Ice lines inside when insulation turns into a freezer. If Chapter 1 describes sweat as the enemy, at a deeper level there is a more subtle adversary: moisture migration within insulation layers. In extreme cold, moisture is always moving, from skin outward, from breath into fabric, from humid air inside a sleeping space into the fibers of cotton and synthetic fill. The problem is this: as moisture travels through insulation, it encounters a thermal boundary where temperatures drop below freezing. There, vapor does not escape. It freezes inside the material, creating what people on the street bluntly but accurately call ice lines. The consequence isn't just dampness, it's the loss of loft that the trapped still air provides warmth. A sleeping bag may appear intact, no tears, no holes. Yet after several consecutive nights, it grows heavier, stiffer, less insulating, as if it aged years in 72 hours. From this emerges a technical principle outsiders often miss. Adding layers does not always add warmth if those layers trap moisture. A multi-layer system without a proper vapor path can turn a sleeping space into an ice reservoir, steadily increasing heat loss. In the field, experienced individuals treat mornings as maintenance shifts. checking for areas that have stiffened signs of ice accumulation, fluffing and separating compressed sections, allowing materials to breathe without exposing themselves to wind. This is no longer instinctual survival. It is materials management under extreme conditions. In deep cold, the difference between having a sleeping bag and surviving lies in understanding that insulation is not an object. It is a state of dry air held still. The logistics of a blizzard. Batteries, information, and the microeconomy of survival. In a blizzard, people experiencing homelessness aren't fighting only the temperature. They are fighting logistical collapse. In a functioning city, energy is invisible. Outlets everywhere, stores open, buses running, phones connected. But when snow blocks routes, the normal system fractures, and those fractures fall hardest on people without reserves. One rarely discussed but life-critical detail. Batteries fail in the cold. Many battery types, especially in phones, lose efficiency dramatically in deep cold. This turns a phone from a convenience into an artery of information. Maps of warming centers with constantly changing hours. A way to call for help when someone fades. A storage device for photographed documents, contacts, benefit codes, and appointments. Within tent clusters, a small economy forms around energy and information. Those with power banks become anchors. Those who know snowplow schedules or warming center hours become navigators. One timely message can move an entire group to safer ground before the wind shifts. At the same time, survival brings another equation: supply chains. Blizzards disrupt routes to soup kitchens, churches, and donation centers. When people cannot travel far, geography becomes destiny. Proximity to aid increases survival odds. Distance means cold plus hunger plus isolation tightening together. In this way, during a blizzard, homelessness becomes more than a lack of shelter. It becomes a self-organizing system, sharing information, sharing labor, sharing risk, and sometimes sharing mistakes. Because one logistical miscalculation can ripple through surrounding tents like dominoes. This is what many relief reports overlook. A blizzard is an infrastructure crisis, and those without access to infrastructure experience cold exponentially. After survival, lasting damage, loss loops, and the policy question. When the storm passes, the city resumes its rhythm quickly. Human bodies do not. Those who endure multiple nights of extreme cold carry an invoice they cannot immediately pay. Sleep deprivation slows reflexes, increases accidents, and causes conflict. Persistent numbness in fingers and toes reduces temporary work capacity. Coughing, chest pain, and respiratory infections emerged days later, just when danger seemed over. And a specific psychological trauma. Surviving by luck, leaving the brain hypervigilant, unable to rest. But the harshest part of post-storm isn't temperature. It's a social consequence. During the storm, documents are soaked, blown away, and stolen. Afterward, lacking documents means difficulty accessing benefits, missed medical appointments, interrupted treatment, inability to secure work. A fragile opportunity slips away, returning someone to the sidewalk where winter will come again, like a loop. So the question, why don't they just go to a shelter, cannot be answered with morality or attitude. It is a systems design question. If cities want battles at -28 degrees Celsius to stop unfolding in their centers, safety systems must change at precise points. Low barrier shelters, reduced entry conditions, flexible hours, less surveillance-oriented atmosphere, secure storage space lockers, property rooms, because for someone with nothing, their belongings are their identity. Acceptance of complexity, space for couples, pets, people in recovery, and trauma survivors. Mobile outreach models are warming clusters with clear real-time updates instead of scattered information. Housing first is the central strategy because no one stabilizes while fighting a biological war every night. After a blizzard, The city looks clean. Snow reflects light. Everything appears renewed. But beneath that brightness are people paying with skin and nerves for a system built without them in mind. And that is the coldest conclusion of all. In a developed city, minus 28 degrees Celsius is not just the weather. It is an ethical stress test of infrastructure, revealing who is protected by normal and who must write their survival manual with their own body. Dawn on ice. When the storm clears, snowdrifts cover the city in silent beauty. But beneath wind-shaken tarps, morning light carries no romance. It is confirmation of survival through another 24-hour cycle. Pale hands begin clearing snow, checking for signs of frostbite, sharing remaining hot water, and confirming the survival of neighbors. The metropolitan rhythm resumes, rushing past the clusters of tents. Few realize that just hours earlier, these unnamed individuals were applying systems of physical and psychological discipline rigorous enough for the harshest survival manuals. They are not passive victims awaiting rescue. They are invisible combatants waging an unequal battle against nature and circumstance. May those facing winter outdoors soon find stable ground, practical support programs, and a true roof overhead so they no longer have to brace themselves against another storm. Thank you for watching this report from The Homeless Fact. If these unfiltered perspectives offer you a deeper understanding of social realities, please support us by liking and subscribing. In your view, what must social safety systems change so that battles like these no longer unfold in the heart of developed cities? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.